Welcome back to the Building the Offensive Playbook series. This is episode 2. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're going to be talking about formations. So, continuing along on this journey, we're going to get right back into our Playmaker Pro and, just kind of talk through these formations. So, one thing though, let me know how well y'all can see. Me being able to look at it from here is different than you on your screen. I watched the playback, but just let me know. This time I chose a different color for the defense, just to maybe help it stand out a little bit. And yeah. So just give me that feedback. All right. So the first episode was about philosophy, and I went through kind of the different offenses that I put together. And today, now we're focusing on the one that I'm currently working on, which, as I mentioned in episode 1, is 20 personnel working with a slot. And I kind of talked through the philosophy of that. So then once you get the philosophy down, then you get to the formation. So if you haven't heard this before, it's a pretty standard thing you'll hear from coaches: alignment, assignment, execute. Alignment, assignment, play football. Alignment, assignment, dominate. Whatever. People put their little spin on the third one, but alignment is the first thing for a reason. Obviously, play doesn't start unless we get lined up the right way. I guess I never thought about notifications popping up while I was doing this. That never happened before. But anyway, so formations is the next thing. So in the philosophy, talked a lot about the things that we want to do. And again, this isn't meant to be exhaustive. This is to be kind of general. Now, for me, the stuff I discussed in the philosophy is pretty much where I came from as an approach. It wasn't super deeper than that, but some coaches might be a little more deeper. They might have a long list. Now, I don't think you should have a crazy list. In terms of your philosophy, it's like anything else you heard in business. You should be able to sum it up in a paragraph. You should be able to, or not a paragraph, but like 2 to 3 sentences, basically like a mission statement. It should be something that is pretty quick and easy to understand. So for me with this, once again, we want to attack the flats, and I really wanted to make the defense declare what their box is in terms of, are they going to have a safety come down on the slot, or are they going to pull a backer, nickel out and everything? So that's kind of how we approached it. And so I talked somewhat about formations last episode because those two tie together pretty strongly. When you talk about what you want to get done as an offense, as your core, then the formations are what allow you to do that. So if I said, hey, my main core goal with the offense and the last offense I talked about is to have extra gaps, and then I get out there and we have no formations with 12 personnel or no tight ends, well then obviously that doesn't make any sense. So that those kind of go hand in hand. So I would say I said it last time, but I will say, hey, we want to attack the flats. That, having a slot means having a slot. We know that. But if we want to attack the flats, that, might not necessarily automatically mean 20 personnel. But for me, it meant 20 personnel. I wanted to be able to have the ability to have a back out in the flats, both flats if possible, at all times. And so 20 personnel was just the easiest way to do that. Plus, 20 personnel is pretty flexible, and that's why I wanted to do that. One thing I will say before we get into it is that the volume is going to go up as you go up in levels of competition. The NFL just they have more time to do this. So when you think about high school or even lower levels than that, you don't have a ton of time. And so every formation, and you'll see as we go through this, there are details, there's things that are very specific. And so the more that you have, the more that the players have to learn. And the less time that you have as a program, then the harder it is to build in a lot of stuff, especially when you're talking about high school, where you're in college, where you're guaranteed to have turnover. And so if you got a heavy senior team and you build the playbook up, and then next year your team's super young, you're more than likely not going to be able to just pick up and do what you did the year before. And that's why we talk about continuity, in the NFL is so important. Like, obviously, it's almost impossible to bring back the same exact roster. You can mitigate turnover from one year to the other, but in a 3-year span, it's going to be a lot of turnover and players having to learn new playbooks and all that stuff. That's why those conversations come up. One thing I will say, though, is that in the NFL, if you're applying this discussion to the NFL, this is a lot less important, because the NFL, they have so much time and they play so much football that you're going to see the same formations pretty much on every single team. There's not going to, there's always popular formations. There's always formations that are might be a little newer, but for the most part, you're going to see every team running everything essentially, because whether it's from emotion or not or any of that, you're going to see the formations. Like in high school or especially lower level, yes, you could play a team and you might not see trips all game. In the NFL, that's going to happen. You're going to see 20 personnel. You're going to see 11. You're going to see, or you might not see 12, but you're definitely going to see 10 personnel. You're going to see empty. All that is going to come into play in the NFL. So it's a little less about that, because, again, it's about tendencies. Now, NFL, any team, but NFL especially, they care more about, okay, what are the tendencies out of the formations? What are their favorite formations? Not necessarily what formations do they run, because everybody runs pretty much all the formations. And certain teams are going to have different tweaks to it. They might not line up the exact same way, but in the NFL, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, we're seeing doubles this week. Yeah, you're going to see double. You're going to see 2x2. You're going to see deuce close. You're going to see trips weak, trips strong. You're going to see tray open, tray close. You're going to see all type. You're going to see it, because there's so much time for them to put that stuff in the playbook, and they've been working on this stuff forever. So again, it's about really understanding the core of what the offense is for defense. Now, backtrack that to high school, a lot less time, again, a lot more turnover, a lot less professional. So you do have to really make sure that you're getting those core formations. And really, a lot of times, that's what you'll see. You're not going to see a high school team that runs 30 formations in one game. It's just not really realistic. All right. So obviously, you're looking at my playbook and my discussion. So this is going to be approached more from a high school lens. So, okay, we said all that. All right. So what are we doing? I would say base, if I had to. Obviously, there's not necessarily a base in offense, but if I had to say, our base would be this. And we'll get into the naming part of it once we get to that episode where we're talking about play call, like operations, names, and all that stuff. So that part's not super important. All right, so first of all, what's the philosophy? What's all that? Number one, you do want to name your positions. That I think that's important to talk about in this conversation. So for me, obviously you got the quarterback. We did X and Z, and I mentioned this last time. For simplicity's sake, X is always going to be on the left side. Z is always going to be on the right side. Again, that could mean those letters could mean something very different in the different offense, mean something different in West Coast, mean something different in everything else. S is the slot, and obviously got the quarterback. H is our halfback, our running back, and P is our super back slash F back slash whatever. Why I call it a P back, we will get into that in that episode because it has changed multiple times, and I do think that's a good discussion how we got there. But those are the positions. Obviously, the linemen are pretty. I've never seen an offense that tweaked the names of the O line. The O line is the O line. Left tackle, left guard, center, blah blah blah. So that's what we got in our base package. And so from there, we do have different formations, which we'll go through, but we're going to go through kind of the rules, quote unquote, or the philosophy. So, and really, I have this two ways. Again, this is me kind of talking through it in real time. I haven't necessarily agreed on what I want to do, but obviously that will, matter once I actually am with a team and we decide that. But for this creation, this is my original. I wanted to have the receivers on the number. So here's what I actually started off with. I wanted to have the receiver to the strong side of the field. Really, this is the middle, so this is fine. But let's just say we moved all of this slightly over. And so this is the strong side of the field. That's going to drive me crazy every time, but whatever, it's fine. So let's say this is the strong side of the field. I want my outside receiver to be right outside the numbers. And again, I want to spread this offense. I want to use the width of the field. So then, if you're on the strong side, I want the receiver just outside of the hash marks. Let's get a little bit closer. There. So I would say a step. So if I'm coaching this, I would say I want you a step outside. Like I would tell them, get on the hash, take one step over. Get on the numbers, take one step over. Backside, I want you to split the hash in the numbers. So yeah, that the rest of where this lines up doesn't matter. If you're on the weak side, I want you to split the hash in the numbers. So as you can see, and we're getting into the details, y'all. I told you this is real deal football. So if we're on the numbers right now, let's just say, and I really only move these corners leverage because it's kind of hard to see them when you put them on the other graphic, but you can see what I'm talking about. So let's just say, because this is supposed to be cover 2. So cover 2, more than likely, they're going to be head up. They're not really going to be hard leverage, more than likely. But once you're this far, so this corner, you're really far outside the numbers. It's cover 2. You want to funnel this receiver inside to the safety. All right, so him getting really wide helps you pretty much because you don't have a lot of space here to cover. Not that you're going downfield, but you are responsible for anything inside the receiver or the receiver's alignment. So if this receiver runs here, you funnel him inside to your safety, your job is pretty much done, depending on, how they coach you to do it. So because pretty much the open space is inside, your job is kind of done because the receiver doesn't have much room to go outside. Now, there's some coaches that will coach cover two. If he tries to go outside of you, then you collision him and you carry it. So if that happens, if let's say we're running a fade, that corner has all the leverage because there's not much space out here, so it's easy for him to cover. So that, again, that helps cover two. And that would be the same thing back here, and that's why I changed the alignment. So instead of lining out or lining up on the numbers, and honestly, I think originally that's how I had it. Instead of doing that, backside, I want you to split the numbers in the hash. And the reason I want you to do that is because now you see the complete difference in what we just talked about. Now I got cover two. More than likely, look at all this space. What is the coach going to tell you? Line up outside leverage. They might line up head up, which is fine. But more than likely, you might get a corner that's going to be outside leverage. So if a corner then gets outside leverage like this, not only do I got a free release because it's less likely that I'll get jammed, but it kind of gives my quarterback an indicator of what type of coverage we got. And so let me see. Again, you just kind of got to eyeball it. Now, in an actual coaching situation, we'll be on the field, so I'll be able to tell, like a step outside the hash, step outside the numbers. That's kind of eyeballing it. In real life, we'll be able to mark off where the midpoint between the hash and the numbers are, so our receivers are used to doing it. But I'm just eyeballing it right now. So anyway, this corner more than likely might be leaning to his outside leverage. He might be full outside leverage. And again, he might still go head up, but that's fine because either that's man two or that's cover two. That's really all it is. And that still tells us something. But again, depending on how they coach, that corner's alignment is going to tell me something about what they're doing. Because there's just too much space. And so as some coaches, they're going to be like, look, especially in high school, we're not going to try to disguise this, because what will happen is, let's say this is cover two and you say, all right, line up, head up. I'm telling you what I would do. What I would do is I'm like, okay, in cover two, they're lining head up, right? So what I want you to do is run, collide with the corner like you're trying to get inside. So it doesn't really matter. You might think it's a slant, you might think it's a skinny post, whatever. I'm going to tell my receiver collide and then fade out because it's so much space here that if you're going to play me on the line, and again, if the receiver is really good at his job and he can get off a press, that's all day. There's a lot of space. But if he's not able to get off a press, collide with him and fade out. We got space. We'll win that matchup, or we should win that matchup. But again, this is to make the defense declare. So if it's quarter, half, which I don't really necessarily expect. I mean, you might. I mean, I've done it too on defense, so maybe you would. But either way, if it's quarter, half, and well, wherever the safety wants to line up, and this corner is off, again, that tells me. But the thing is, and again, this is why I like it backside, because nobody's going to bring their extra defender out here. Either you're going to bring this safety down, and if you do, that means it's cover three because there's nobody else there to do it, or some type of man situation. If you leave a safety back and the corner's off, that means it's a quarter, half, because these corners are lined up differently, which means this safety's going to be over here, this safety's going to be over the middle. So the only other option is to bring your backer, strong, whoever your strong side defender is, nickel backer. You're not gonna do that because the slot's wide open. Now, if you bring, you wouldn't even do that because that wouldn't even make sense. That's really pretty much never gonna happen. So the only other option is to bring your other linebacker out. Then you got a 5-man box. Then you're gonna be screwed. But either way, you might bring this guy down, and that's cover 3. Because you're not gonna have a 5-man box with 2 running backs in the backfield. If you do, I'm running all day. So you got to bring this defender down. If you do, then again, that tells me cover 3 or man free, whatever. Either way, this formation, or at least that decision, is to help the quarterback and the offense kind of identify what we're seeing. And that's why instead of having the receiver, because a lot of offenses will mirror, and that's just easy. That's what they're taught, especially on the lower level. So we're going to line up the same. And this is why coaching and smart players are so important. And so whenever, and we'll get to it more, but whenever you hear people say it's in the details and we got to fix the details, people always want to say, oh, that's cliche, that's coach speak. No, I mean, sure, if you want to call it that, but that has a negative connotation. It's important for a reason. So we need players that understand. In this case, I need a receiver that understands I'm on a single receiver side. I need to have my splits reduced to this. I'm on the wide side. I need to have my split outside the number. I'm the slot. I have to have my splits outside the hash. Again, if we move middle of the field, we can discuss what we want to do, whatever. More than likely, if I call it to the weak side or the short side of the field, or we're middle of the field, which we're about middle of the field here, more than likely I would tell the receiver just line up on the numbers, especially if we're on the short side. So if I call that to the short side, I don't really need you outside the numbers. I'm going to tell you to get on the numbers. But again, I need players that understand that and don't have to be told that. And so again, that's why the details are very important. All right, so that's the receiver rules right there. Offensive line. Let's talk about this. This is very important. So you might notice, you might not, but there's a bigger gap in between the guard and center than it is the guards and tackles. That's on purpose. That's another part of my alignment, especially in our kind of core formations. So there's a reason that I want to do that. And I'm already prepared for this to piss me off. So, yeah, it's about to happen. That's fine. That's fine. I'm going to just have to deal with this. But the reason that you do this is that your splits, obviously I showed you the receiver, splits in alignment can influence the defense. And then, or the secondary. Same thing with the O-line. The O-line splits, and really if you bring another person on the surface, a tight end, it's going to influence the defensive line alignment. So if I were, again, I'm going to just have to live with this. This is not going to be even, y'all, so that's fine. So let's say we are already... good old playmaker. I already messed up. So let's say we move these back and they're kind of... These aren't normal, but let's just call it normal. These are tight splits. All right. Let's say I wanted my tackles wide. Excuse me. Sorry, I got to leave that cough in there. All right. So what is that going to do? That's going to... So if you're the 3 tech here, I guess I should have showed you what it looks like before. But when the tackle is closer, obviously the end's closer. Once the tackle gets wider, obviously the end gets wider. So now that gap is, or at least the gap between the space in between the defensive end and the rest of it is a little wider. And so that arc could be wider, whatever reason we want to do it. So it's the same thing with the guards. And I'm going to, again, play this by ear. This might be a little over exaggerated, which is fine. I'll tell you the reasoning behind it. All right, so now the guards moved over. As you see, that 3 tech now has to move over. All right, so the reason that we do this is that the A gaps are a little more open. The distance between the 3 tech and the A gap is a little wider, and the distance between the 1 tech, or excuse me, whatever they do, if it's a 0 tech, is going to be a little wider away from this guard. And this 3 tech, this B gap is a lot closer, which means this is now closer to the tackle. So whoever's in the B gap is closer to the tackle. So for me personally, what I want to accomplish out of this offense, I want to have that A gap a little more open. And we'll talk about traps because it helps with that, but that wasn't necessarily the original intent. The original intent is I want to primarily run inside zone. And again, we'll talk about that more once we get to the run game. But as I've said before all the time, the inside zone is ran to the open B gap. And you run it, and it's designed to either hit there for the most part, or sorry, I just did this backwards. So it's designed to either hit in the open B gap, or it's designed to cut back. So once we spread our guards out a little more, this A gap defender is as I said, further away from the guard. So the 1 tech, he's on the center's outside shoulder. Technically it'd be more like this, because that's half the man. And so as you see the difference in the space that makes, these people are a lot closer on this side of the D line than over here. That gives me a open B, more open B gap. That B gap is more open than it was in our regular stance. So that gives us more space to operate. Because that 1 tech has to be closer to the center than the guard, it's easier for this center to reach block him when we zone. And it's easier for my guard to be wide open to go to the next level. That's the essential reason that we did it. And again, if we're looking at other formations, which we'll get to, this A gap is a little more open, because one thing you don't, well, 2 things. Number 1, you want to make sure you're attacking the correct area when you're doing the run. You can teach a run blocking play to fit any front, but you still have a preferred place you want to run it. So we can run inside zone to a closed B gap, but I want to run it to an open B gap. And so that's number 1. And then number 2, once again, you should be able to have multiple options so that you can attack different gaps. And that's why I talked about in the first episode with my 12 personnel. That's a little more built in, but there's some ideas that carried over to this offense, and we'll talk about that in the run game. So if for whatever reason this B gap is closed, let's say we got a team that runs 33s. So 33s, 2-3 techniques, or bear front, whatever. So let's just say for whatever reason, hey, they're running 33s on us because we kill inside zone. They know we kill inside zone, so they got their guys in the B gaps. Okay, cool. What we're allowed to do with these formations, and I'll show you that in a little bit, is that when I get to my other formations, I can now not only have a wide open, these A gaps are bigger, but then I also got a guy that can always lead block. And now not only do you have nobody in the A gap, but we got an extra lead blocker coming downhill too. So that's kind of why we did the splits the way the splits are. The coaching point to that, the way that I would coach it, or the way that I have coached it, is typically you'll probably be like a foot away. Um, depending on what it is. I wouldn't even say a foot. Maybe it's like typically, well, again, depends on systems, but some of the systems that I've been, you be about a foot away, and then we'll have the guard and tackle line up on the heels of the center. And again, it depends on what you want to do. So if you're a team that likes to pull a lot, or you're doing a play that is a pull, a lot of people want those guards deeper in the backfield so it's easier for them to get around the center. And in the NFL, of course, now that's a lot harder because they said that you got to be lined up on the center's waist, because for a tackle, you line up deep and it's easier for you to beat the end on the pass rush. And again, for the guard, you line up deep, it's easier for you to pull. And so they were, cheating. They were cheating the splits. And so, or at least the depth, and the NFL cracked that down. But either way, however you teach it, like I said, I think on average, it'll be about a foot. So if you want to call this a foot apart, and I probably would say half a foot is what I want. Like when you walk out, you'll see my guard and center pretty close together. And then I would say about a foot and a half between the center. Now again, in the summertime in practice, you work on that. You continue to work on that, so that eventually, hopefully, again, as you get further along, you got guys that have been doing it. They know what that spacing is. But in practice, it's fine. Let me put a foot in between you. Let me put a foot and a half between you. 2 feet might be too wide, but I wouldn't mind it. I would try it, honestly. If I start coaching again, I probably will start out with 2 feet, because I want to see what the defense does, but B, I really want to open up the A gaps, because naturally, in my opinion, you're going to start to cheat and try to fill these A gaps because you feel like they're too open. And then again, that opens up the B gap for us to kind of do our thing. So, all right, so boom. I don't know. I don't like overlap. I hate that, but whatever. So again, that's kind of our O-line splits. And again, for different things, it might be different. Like, I think one of the smart things that, in a college game, some people will explode their line. They'll have real wide splits because they want the edge pressure to be real wide to the quarterback. More likely that you could run around the quarterback. That's one attack. I like in the NFL when teams get real close splits where they're foot to foot on a passing down, because, and so some people might say, doesn't that shorten the arc to the quarterback? It does, but what it also does is it makes games a lot harder. And that's kind of true in this situation too, which is why I don't want it to be too wide, because if it's super wide, what happens when you get a stunt? And you get a stunt, and this guy goes here, and then this guy goes here, and then this guy goes here, and this guy comes off the edge. I'll tell you what happened. It's going to be a lot harder for the offensive line to help out each other, and it's a lot more chance that somebody's going to be running wide open. And that's the reason why you don't want it too wide. And then passing, again, some philosophies, they'll bring everybody closer because now all the D lines together, and if they do a stunt, it's really easy for the O line to pick up. The other thing that I'll say for this is it makes double teams easier. Now, me, I do like the pull, and you'll see some of that once we get to the run game. But if we're running a double team, it's so easy for my guard and my tackle to just get this guy because he's so much closer. Conversely, if I'm running some type of power play, which is one of my number ones, and we run that to the open B gap as well, the angle is so much easier for my center. Once this guard pulls, around, it's so much easier for my center to just ear hold that 3-tech because he's so far away. And if we miss him, he's more than likely not going to be in the play. And if he does his job well and he follows the pull, again, my center could ear hold him. So again, philosophy really drives a lot of this. And you want to be able to match up your philosophy with the formations that you're running. All right, so those are kind of the rules. Quarterback depth is, I like heels at 4 or heels at 5. And again, you'll notice these landmarks. So when we talk about being detail oriented, those things matter. And this is just, we didn't even really get into the formation. But the good thing is these rules are pretty much the same in any formation for these guys. It's the backs that got to change. So I got heels at 4, which is more about a pistol distance than a shotgun distance. And then from this is our 2-back personnel. Essentially, what I want is the running back to be about 2 yards off the heels of the center, the quarterback. And the reason I want that is because when we run a zone, the aiming point, and again, we'll talk about once we get to the run game, is straight through the quarterback. Straight through the quarterback. And my offense is, I mean, if you don't got a quarterback that can do it, obviously fine. But we do want to have a lot of quarterback zone read option in there. So it'll be hard to show you here, but the quarterback basically opens up towards the running back, and has to get out of his way. And when I was coaching this mesh point to my first group, I told the running back, you want to beat the quarterback there because I want you to be running with that type of momentum. And that forces the quarterback to be quicker, getting out of the way, opening up his hips, which he needs to do not only for the mesh point, so he can see the backside read key as well. So for both of those reasons, this thing doesn't know how to get rid of 2 things. For both of those reasons, that's kind of the depth that we're looking at. So heels at 4, I would say, or if the quarterback's heels at 4, I would say the running back would be standing right at 6. So that's 4, 5, 6. Same thing for the P back. All right. That's their alignment on this. This is kind of standard, whatever. And then the other formation is where the P back is first. So we'll call this left to right. And I'll probably wait to get, sorry. The back is also going to split the guard. So your outside foot should be halfway split in between the guard's legs. Same thing over here. So that's the width and depth that we kind of want. Width and depth. I know. Don't make fun of me, y'all. All right. And the reason you want to have it left to right, which once we get into motions and everything, I want to be able to get to different formations. I want to be able to get through the motions and motion to different formations and all those different things. So that's why it's important to be able to have a formation where the H-back is on one side and be able to flip it. And how we name that and call that, again, we'll get into that later. All right, so from there, we got a formation where the P-back is opposite of the running back. And the alignment for this is dead in the middle of the guard and center. And he's going to be right at the heels of the guard and center. H-back, same thing. As you can see from this formation, the number of different things we can do with this. And I already told you before, so I don't mind really jumping ahead in terms of plate or how we call it. But I said before I could go S right, S left. So it can look like this, where you pretty much got two people, two extra bodies, I would probably say, to that side of the field. Or it could be S right, and if it's S right, then that's depending on what they call. I don't know what the defense would call. This could be the weak side of the field. So they might go strong side to the slot. They might go strong side to the P-back. It really depends on the defense. Again, that's something that you want to find out early in the game. And we'll talk about that during the play calling episode once we talk about scripts. So anyway, so from here, why do I want this? I want to be able to have an extra blocker, essentially. And I want them in a position that's multiple. And again, I kind of talked about that last time. So we can do a number of things. So if they're lining up strength to the P-back, which would probably be a good defensive tactic, that's fine. Because we got other runs besides inside zone, but inside zone would be my number one run. They want to take that away. That's cool. So if that's the case, more than likely this would probably bounce. That allows the P-back to be a lead blocker there. And it allows my P-back to come back across if we want to run split zone. And so split zone, for those that don't remember, is essentially the line is going to zone to the one way. Excuse me. And the back is going to come block the other way. Usually it's a tight end, it could be a fullback, whatever. So it gives you, again, it's called split zone because it gives you that from the defense, it gives you the appearance that they're going two different ways. And that's fine. So again, if you got your 3 tech here and you're playing aggressive to the zone, then we'll do split. We'll do split zone. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself because this should be for the running, but we do split zone, so I don't got to block him. My tackle goes to the back. If everybody flows hard, my P-back kicks that guy out, and we cut it back. We cut it back to the A-gap. So, again, thinking ahead, what are the plays that you're going to run? What are the things that you want to do? Or at least what are the things you want to do, and building formations to kind of match that. All right, so there's that. And then from there, we got the I formation. So the P-back is going to, and this is slightly different for the H-back. P-back is going to line up directly behind the guard, and the H-back is going to line up directly behind the P-back. So same level of depth in terms of 2 yards off the quarterback's heels, but instead of outside foot splitting the guard, he's just going to split the guard, so we got an I formation. So again, when we talked about that A gap, and one of the reasons that we did what we did, so if we got we got a team that wants to play shrink to the P back, and they want to take away the B gap. That's fine. A gap, boom, we got an insert. Which you would probably call this, most defenses call this an insert, because they're not on the edge. They're not a surface threat. They're a person that can really do anything, especially on the interior. So however you want to call it, that's fine. If you say, hey, we want to go bare front, and we want to go, or not even, well, yeah, bare front. And this is another reason that I really enjoy having these guards split out a little more. So let's say we want to go bare front. Bare front, 0, 2 threes, and then 2 edges. All right, that's cool. We can still get to the A gap if we want, but let's say they do this instead, where they put the edge on the weak side, and then they kind of apex this guy. Whatever you want to call it. Even if he's here, I don't really care. We can now get to the edge. That's fine. You want to close up the middle. From this position, I can still get to the edge if I want, and we can play out on the perimeter. So again, flexibility with that. So that's the I formation. Well, that's the I formation. We had the 2 backs in the backfield. We had the one that was opposite. Yeah, I think those are the main ones. Now the other ones that I have, do have a couple more. So we got a trips look. So here's the trips for me, and we'll put it to the wide side just to make it a little cleaner for you. All right, so if we go trips, we'll go right outside that number, right outside the hash. No different for these two, so we're calling it trips right. No different for the X. The only difference is the P, he's going to line up right outside of the tackle. Not outside, I should say, but right on the edge. So I would say his inside foot is going to be on the tackle's outside foot. So he looks kind of like a wing, more so than anything. Because you've seen where a tight end obviously lines up in line, on the line. You've seen them where they line up off the line. This is that, but it's a little tighter. And you could probably guess why. Because I still want to be able to use that player the same way that I was using him throughout this offense. And so from here, I could still run split zone. I could still, really, if I wanted to, I can run an ISO. I could do a trap from here. We could get to the edge. We could do all that. The thing that it does is it gets this player into the space to get into a route a lot easier because it's a little wider than it usually is. All right. And so to a defense, that's a trips look, very much a trips look, and then they can line up how they want. Now the trips look really matters because, and I ain't gonna get too deep into this, but just as I'm moving these people around, if you're not treating this like trips, let's say we're in I formation. If you're not treating this like trips, you're not thinking of a seam threat. So if you're not thinking of a seam threat, this strong side defender is probably going to apex between the tackle and the receiver. They're going to try to get to the middle of that and apex it. Once this is a trips look, or the appearance of a trips look, then you got a seam threat. And so these backers might widen. You might still apex, or you might want to be able to get this defender over the top. Whatever. It's going to change the splits a little bit. But anyway, that's the trips look. Outside of trips, we got a bunch. And so the way the bunch is, the P is in the same spot. The slot is going to come and line up on the line of scrimmage. And then the Z is going to come line up opposite, same level as the P. So again, in different offenses, that could be called a bunch of different things. And defenses most certainly gonna call it tight bunch, whatever they want to call it. But for us, it's just bunch. And I'm getting ahead with telling y'all the different names. And so from here, this is a super popular formation. If you watch my film sessions, you know this is a super popular formation in the NFL right now. I'm a big fan of bunch. I'm a huge fan of stack, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And but this particular formation I definitely picked up in researching the NFL right now. And there's just so much you can do with this. Obviously, well, not obviously, but one big thing you can do, let's say they're using this defender. I was going to change it to nickel, but it doesn't really matter. Let's say they're using that defender and they're going to line them up outside so the end stays inside. What you get is an easy crack back block, or really whatever you want to call it. Because crackbacks aren't legal anymore. Let's call it a pin. So we can pin this guy if we want to. If I really want to, sorry, that shouldn't have been. That should be a blocking symbol. So if we really want to have that slot crack the end, and then we could pull both of these people and have two pullers. Or if we didn't want to do that, we could crack that in. You could bring this tight end backside for a kick out, and that allows the guards to pull, and you can go from there. So then the guards could pull out if you want linemen blocking instead. Whatever. We can get to the perimeter pretty easy with this type of formation. And then obviously when you're talking about passing, you're able to do switch releases, delayed releases, all that fun stuff, because these two aren't on the line. So we can do all types of fun stuff with our releases. And it's just one, and obviously you can motion out of here and do different things. So that's one of the reasons that formation is super popular. Going back to trips, we got trip stack. So trip stack is essentially same for the P. The only difference is the slot is stacking behind the Z. And there's different ways we could do this, but right now in our base, our core, this is how I kind of want to run it. And I want to run it that way because let's say we're in this formation. It's going to be the same for the most part. I actually haven't decided yet, but I might possibly lean towards, okay, if we're in stack, cut the formation down just like we do backside. Or honestly, we could run stack from where the slot is, which is right outside the hash. Either way. Now, there is a benefit to running it from, I wouldn't say outside the numbers. We definitely would be on the numbers, if anything. And if we're out wide, the slot's going to be inside, then outside. But either way, couple things here. Philosophy-wise, slots got to be a route runner for the things we want to do in the passing game. Well, I would say route runner. They gotta have some explosion. And so from here, again, I want the slot off so they got a free release, because you might more times than not have a smaller, skinnier guy slot. I want him to have that free release. Now, keeping it out wide, and we could again, once we get to the naming of formations and stuff, we could have different tags so that we could run either one. But just talking base, if I keep this out wide, obviously we got a lot of space to the inside, but more than likely the defense is going to cheat inside, whatever. But we still get that. We got delayed release, switch release. We can do kind of what we want because that opens up that space, and it's going to pull somebody. That's the biggest thing. Whoever the defender is going to be. So if you say, hey, I want to keep my backers in, so that means the safety's got to be over there. But the safety can't be halfway over there because you can run bubble. You can do that all day. So the safety or whoever it is has to, if it's the safety, let's say it's off. Let's say the corner is pressing. Even if it's off, you see how far that brought the safety over. All right, so let's say the safety doesn't come and it's a nickel defender. However you want to do it. They have to come all the way over. The nickel more than likely is not going to sit here because, again, you could kind of run a bubble, whatever, depending on how wide you are. More than likely, they're going to get over here, and that's going to pull them completely out of the box, giving us a better picture, at least, of what they're doing. So, obviously, if this is how you're playing it, and my guess, it would be quarter, quarter, half. So if you're going to play it where you're pulling and you're having a 6-man box, guess what I'm about to do all day long? We got extra blocker. We about to run this ball. If you're like, hey, we got to keep somebody back so to keep the box a little more full. All right. Alignment is going to tell me everything. This safety sits over the top, probably cover 2. If the safety is kind of walked up, this might be cover 3. You know, whatever. That's going to tell me. And either way, you know, that's going to tell me too. So now if you're pulling the safety and you're going single high, then we can get to the pass formations that we like. That will be a little different. So that's stack, and then trip stack would just be the same thing. But again, I'm playing with the notion because if we bring it to kind of that split between the hash and the numbers, it gives us a little bit of that same effect, but it makes a throw easier. So if for whatever reason they said, hey, press them, safety cheats down, no extra defender pulled outside of the box, and I want to throw a bubble or a now screen, that throws easier than if it's all the way out here. And so that's one benefit. Obviously, we can attack the middle of the field quicker, and we got more of a two-way go. So that's one benefit of that too. And now that I'm looking at this, I can run a tunnel screen from here. But anyway, so that's one stack. So trip stack, or just regular stack, S right stack. So we could do that. And then I showed you the bunch, and that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's pretty much the formations that we're working with at our core. And again, there's details in how we want to do these, and there's details in the alignment. For what I'm doing, again, I'm trying to make it as simplistic as possible by keeping a lot of the things the same. But you could imagine, again, so the volume, you keep hearing about volume. So if you get to the NFL, where you know you got 30 plus formations, understand each of those formations and where you are on the field, there's going to be different details of where you align and everything. And we haven't even gotten to the motions. So if we're going to do a certain motion, that might change how you get aligned. And that might change how you might cheat the splits or anything. And so all these formations, and even the play. So if we're running a certain type of play, you might, as a slot, you might cheat a little wider than being right there. We might have a certain play where I tell the slot, hey, get right behind, stack literally right behind the Z. So, and actually, you know what? I think that was my original. Like, I was big like traditional stack. And there's reasons you could do that, but the thing is you can't you pretty much have to switch release. Like, you gotta wait for the most part for this Z to get out your way. And so if we keep it, regular stack, where if the receiver's lined up, you're lined up right outside his outside foot. That's the landmark. And so if you hear landmarks, that's what we're talking about. When I say heels at 4, feet at 6 off the heels of the quarterback, those are all landmarks. So anyway, so feet right outside the outside foot of the receiver. The thing that you can do from here is both of these receivers can go at the exact same time. So let's just say he's running a dagger, and let's say he's running a fade, or not even a fade. Let's do a more straight line. Let's say he's running an out route. Y'all, at the snap of the ball, y'all both can go. And so the difference is that if I had that receiver stacked right behind that other receiver, it doesn't really matter what he's running. You got to wait for him to get off the line for you to do your thing. Otherwise, you'll just be running around him. But my point, there's a lot of different nuances and details that you can do with each formation. So same thing, like I said, if we're in the I formation, I want the running back in line with the guard. If we're in anything else, I want the running back to split the guard. Outside foot, split the guard. So those small details, so you think about it once you get to the NFL level, how many formations there are, how many different rules there are, alignment, and that's why having smart players matters. That's why having continuity matters, because then you can continue to build on these different things. And I probably showed you, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So essentially, or I should probably say this. So these are what I call my 20 personnel formations. So this formation, and then these formations. That's 20. Once we get to the trips, that's more what I consider 10 personnel. So whether we're running bunch, or if we're running trips, or if we're running trip stack, that's more what I call 10 personnel. So that's how I would separate those. And personnel matters. Now, ideally, you want this to be the everything. That's why I called him the super back. You want this to be the same guy. You want this a guy that could kick out an end, and you'll see the pass plays. You want to be able to run routes. But if you don't have a guy that's fully that, then if I call 10, even though the position stays the same, if I say 10 personnel and I bring in more of a receiver type, tight end type, he would come in and he would line up in the P position. And that's why personnel is very important to defenses, because if you bring in certain people for certain personnels, you know that the offense likes to run certain plays, certain formation out of certain personnel. So that's why personnel matters. But for us, as far as calling it, it'll be called the same, but these are more 10 personnel plays. And if I have to have a different player come in, then that's just what it'll be. All right. So yeah, I think that's it. We talked a lot. Go down comment section. Any questions you got, any thoughts, share it around, get the conversation started. Thank you for listening.